It's not letting me pick full screen, but it's not. Anyways, so welcome to today's session, everyone. My name is Trinity, and I'm a member of PreMedCC, which is a student-led organization that was founded in fall of 2021. Our goal as an organization was to create an online program for pre-medical students at community colleges and universities with the hope of guiding the next generation of diverse and inclusive physicians. We know how challenging finding mentorship can be, especially in the middle of a pandemic. And while we advertise our organization as being for community college students, our events are open to anyone. We realize that finding mentorship and guidance in a pre-med journey can be especially challenging for first-generation med students, people that lack the financial resources, or just those that do not know anyone in the medical field. One of the best parts about our events is that they are virtual, so you can do it from the comfort of your own home or wherever you are. We typically have events on Fridays from 5 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. PST, and occasionally on Saturdays. And if you aren't able to attend our event, all of our sessions are recorded and uploaded onto our YouTube channel afterwards. After you have attended our event, you can log in onto our website and complete the quiz, which will contain questions pertaining to our session today. And if you score 70% or higher on the quiz, you will be awarded a certificate to show that you attended our session today. If you want to stay connected with our upcoming events or want to tell your pre-med friends who are struggling to get shadowing experience about PreMedCC, all of our social media accounts are at PreMedCC on all of the platforms here that are listed. At this point, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and do a quick introduction of our speaker, and then I will hand it over to him. Tonight, I will be introducing our speaker, Dr. Barrios. Dr. Barrios is a general surgeon with the additional qualification in surgical critical care. Apart from being a practicing surgeon, he is also a health sciences clinical professor of surgery at UC Irvine. He himself attended UCI and joined the team upon graduating in 2007. He is currently the Director of Trauma Division Research Program, Director of the Critical Care Core Lecture Series, serves as Chair of the UCI School of Medicine Admissions Committee, and is Chair of the Organ Donor Council. Dr. Barrios' clinical research involves thoracic CT imaging in trauma patients, anemia, traumatic brain injury, organ donation, and a few other areas as well. His work has been both presented at conferences and published in peer-reviewed journals. Dr. Barrios is also a passionate volunteer, and he has made 9 mission trips to Central and South America. So thank you for joining us tonight.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you. I wanted to make this very free form, and hopefully also with the opportunity to just ask relevant questions that are on people's minds. I did get the last list of questions forwarded to me earlier, and I actually had to confer a little bit with my boss, who's the Associate Dean of Students, because, and we have to confess, we found some of these questions a little like, really? Do people really say that, or that's a thing out there? So hopefully I'll dispel some of the myths for you. But let me start off by offering, by the way, I can make this as long or as short as you want, so feel free to cut me off or tell me when I have 5 or 10 minutes left, and because I can just talk forever. And some of the subjects that we're going to talk about and some of the topics that you put as part of your mission, including things like mentorship and issues such as those, I have lectures on, or formal lectures or informal lectures on mentorship, on research, on what it takes to get into medical school. So I can go on for various and sundry subjects for a long time. So, but let's get going. So what do we look for? I think is really the basic question that everybody asks. I really don't care where you graduated from. That's a thing of the past a lot. There are some places that are probably a little bit snootier. But in reality, we don't take that into account too much, except for we kind of sort of know who inflates grades and who doesn't. But really, we take people and, we have the reputation of saying, well, UC only takes UC schools graduates. And the problem with that, and, we don't take out of state. Now, the problem with that is it's not true. It's not that we are specifically saying we don't want those students. What ends up happening is if 80 to 90% of my applicants are from UC schools, then a lot of my students are going to end up being from UC schools. So it's not that I specifically take out people that aren't from California or aren't from UC. It's just that that's the way the numbers lie. And And so that's why we have that reputation. But like, and I'll give people a hint. We start off with this year, for instance, we started off with over 7,000 applications, and about 4,000 of those were viable. Next year, we're taking 114 students. So you can do the math. The very large majority of those come from UC schools, as I mentioned. Let's see. Okay, sorry, that was your. But we do realize that some kids are disadvantaged. I also sit on now a couple of different committees that involve diversity and equity at different levels along the way. So including our own staff, medical, professors, attendings. So I have a lot of involvement in that lately, but we do realize that some people are disadvantaged. We do realize that some people can't afford to go to the UC schools, even if they're quite capable of doing so. And it is a little bit cheaper or economically more sound, I should say, to start off at a 2-year place and then finish off later on at a 4-year college. So don't think that because you're not coming from a UC school or a 4-year college that you're automatically shot down. We do have applicants from Cal State. And so as well as other colleges, it's just a wide smattering. So don't feel that that's already like a thing that's not for you, or that's going to exclude you. So aside from the obvious GPA and the MCAT formulas, if you get past the door on that one, and again, some of the questions that I got are relevant to that, although I tend to only speak in generalities, but that is what it is. But what else do we look at after that? If your formula of your grades and your MCATs get you in the door, what do we look for after that? And I generally say it's very, very multifactorial, and the big three that we look at are things that are very tangible and things in terms of activities. So it's not just the grades and it's not just the classes that you took, it's all the other stuff that starts to count. Did you do a lot of research? UCI, for instance, prides itself on being a very research-oriented institution. So we look at what your research activities have been, whether they've been in a lab, whether they've been long-term, whether it's 500 hours, 1,000 hours. And whether it was one summer break or whether it was over a period of years. So this is one of the factors that goes into that. Another one of the factors that goes into that is clinical exposure. So I always say, do I look like I'm like creepily like way into the screen here? Is that a little bit better? Like, there we go. Look like a big giant head in there, I just realized. Where was I going with this? So I had, again, 7,000 kids, and I call you guys kids because I have enough gray hair now. 4,000 viable applications of all of you had this fantasy that you wanted to go to med school. And what have you done to prove to me that you've explored this fantasy, that you know what you're getting yourself into? It's not just some random hoop I'm trying to make you go through to make you, to weed you out. It's like, I want to make sure that you know what you're getting yourself into. And so you need to prove it a little bit to me that you've explored this passion that you feel you have. And that involves different kinds of volunteer work, right? So, and which leads me to one of the questions here. Actually, let me look that up. Here, where's one of the questions here? Okay, so I mentioned the Cal State, I mentioned the U, but wait. Oh yeah, here, this was one of the questions. So like, what do we look at in terms of where your clinical exposure is and where your volunteer work is? And the question was, I think, kind of phrased kind of oddly. and it said medical schools, this is or a myth, I guess, that I was asked to answer. Medical schools look unfavorably on people who gain their clinical experience and patient care experience by getting paid and not by volunteering. So no, I don't necessarily want you to do all of your clinical exposure as volunteer work. Because again, I know that some of you, for whatever reasons, don't have the luxury of being able to volunteer. Some of you are working to pay for college or for other expenses. And so it's not fair of me to insist upon you doing it only as all volunteer. I mean, it's nice. And we do look at community service, and we'll talk a little bit more about the community service because that's the third activity area that we look at. But how do you get your clinical exposure? I don't care if it's volunteer work. We actually kind of look these days because there's very popular types of clinical exposure, a lot of medical assistants, a lot of actual EMT, not just get the training, but you actually work as an EMT, a lot of scribes. A lot of those are paid jobs. You can volunteer, but a lot of those are paid jobs. And so, no, I'm not looking down at you if it's a paid job, because if you're paying your way through college, like that's just kind of silly. So no, that's a myth. And in terms of volunteer work, you can volunteer and do volunteer work that's not necessarily medical either if you have a passion for it. Like, there's build a habitat for humanity or go clean up a beach, or I've seen so many different ways that you can volunteer that go by, some people have specific skills and things that they've learned. Some people are like art. I just have read an application that was like, she is really, really a very good artist. And so part of her thing is she goes and volunteers at some library and teaches kids how to paint. And do you have leadership skills? Not only do you volunteered, but, or maybe you were in a service frat, and the service frat, you were their treasurer or their vice president or their president, whatever. So there's a wide variety of things that you can do. I do look for well-rounded people. So I don't want just the grades, because like I said, once the grades get you past the door, I want to make sure you're a human being. I can tell and I can pick out, and Dr. Osborne, who's my senior, we can very well pick out the kids that are doing it because their parents are making them do it and they really don't have a passion for it, and the kids that really have a passion for it. So you can only fool us so much. And so that covers, and the reason the community service, medicine is a very sacrificed career. So we want to know that you have your heart in it a little bit, that you are altruistic a little bit, that you do give of yourself to help your community and advance your community, and again, the research, because we want to make sure that you are a lifelong student, that you are willing to learn, because medicine continues to expand and change all the time. So part of research is the mentality that you have to learn new things and broaden the field, and so that's why we divide those three things up specifically. Again, not that I'm making you do some weird hoops to get you in and weed some people out. It's because there's a purpose behind making you do some of those things. I can't tell you how much is really good or not, like whether it's 200 hours, whether it's 1,000 hours, or because everybody's a little bit different. And the formula adds up differently, and it is a very complex formula, and that's a little proprietary, so I can't go into that. But generally speaking, those are the things that we look into. And I'm going to do an aside and tell you the last piece of the puzzle are the interpersonal skills, right? To be very cliche, medicine is a very people person industry. If you have a perfect 4.0 and a 100% on your graduate medical education exam, but you have no personality, that really might not be the field for you, because at the end of the day, you have to interact with people. You have to be their advocate. You have to be empathic. And you can't, you have to interact well with them, because you could be the best technician on the planet, and if the patients don't like you, they're not going to come to you, or they're going to walk away dissatisfied, even though physically you did the right thing for them. So that might frustrate some people. Like, why am I getting a 4.0 and a 99% on my NCAT and I'm still not getting in, which happens. It's because there's probably either A, you haven't done enough of the activities that I just rattled off, or Your interpersonal skills really are not where they need to be, and we're picking that up on an interview, and we're picking that up on your personal statement. And that's where I'm going with this, is that one of the pieces of the puzzle are the personal statements that you're asked to write and the secondaries that you're asked to write. People make a horrible mistake as far as I'm concerned. And I'll tell you, because right now, from my own experience this year, I've already read 630 applications. I probably got about another 100-ish to go. So they start to look the same. And there are some things that are an instant turnoff. So you can take notes on this one. Please, dear God, do not write about your sick grandparent, or at least do not start your application, the personal statement off about your sick grandparent. And here's why. I know they are precious to you, but after reading 600 applications about a sick grandparent who died of a stroke or Alzheimer's or cancer or heart disease or diabetes, they are not special to me. And it sounds harsh, but here's the point. The point is, I want to know, and you can mention it later on in your application, or in your personal statement, maybe tucked away somewhere there in the second or the third paragraph. But when you start off with that this is the opportunity for you to tell me why you are different from all of these other kids. And if you start with that, you've already made yourself not different from all of the other kids. And so this is the other mistake, which I'm going to lead you to, which is what I call the laundry list. And the laundry list is this in your personal statement. I have done this and this and this and this and this and this, and that's why I think I'm a good candidate to go to medical school. No, your activities section where you list off all the things that you've done, I already know what you did. I don't need to read it again. What I'm looking for is what makes you different. What insights do you have? Not only did you do the experience, yes, you can mention some of the experiences, but I don't want to know so much about the experiences. I want to know what you took away from it that might be different from somebody else, or what vision of the world is different from somebody else's. And I'll give you a good example of one application that stood out. Was, the applicant had two siblings that were autistic. And so a lot of the things that she did were very consistent with the fact that she had to help take care of her autistic siblings. And then she went off and she went to, I can't remember the name of the camp, where you go and you work with autistic kids to have them learn how to do horseback. She volunteered at a pediatric hospital, and she's probably going to be a pediatrician. And so it's consistent with who she was, which is unique and different. And that's where I'm going with that. And yes, she mentioned a couple of the things that she did, but she did it through the microscope or whatever, the goggles of the importance of pediatrics and dealing with this special. And so that was different. And, some people write about, again, their art, or some people write about the fact that, they tie the fact that they were a dancer or a power lifter or something. So they bring a different vision, not just the rattling off of what you did. So that's a, if it tortures you, then now you have to kind of revamp what your thoughts were on how you were going to write a personal statement. Sorry. I didn't mean to create stress for you, but what are, so to get back now to some of the questions. So do we have any questions yet? And then we'll get to the part where.
Yeah, I think what we could do is you could run off some of the things that we emailed you, and then people on the team will ask you the questions that are being posted.
Okay, fantastic. Great. So let's go through. Do you have to do all of your STEMs at an actual 4-year college? And do we look unfavorably upon you if you did them all at a community college? No, it would be nice to see that you did some of the rigorous courses at a 4th year, but you don't have to do all of them at a 4th year. If there's a couple you think you can knock out that easily fit into your schedule, yes, that's fine. And some of the examples that were given, I think, were like OChem and physics and bio and calculus and things like that. I don't care where you took your calculus class, to be honest with you. I could care less. The biology, the OChem, maybe, but like I said, it's a myth that you have to wait until you get to the last 2 years before you take some of those statistics, things like I really don't care where you did those. It's okay if you stay a little bit longer if you have to. We don't check the timeline. Again, we check and see if you took a couple of the required courses at the senior level, but not a requirement. I don't care if you spent 3 years there and then a year plus to finish it up at a 4-year college. This one was really like, this is definitely a no. Medical schools don't accept students that started at community college. That's not true. I know for a fact that is not true for us. And maybe some of the really super snooty schools might use that as a weed out. But I know we don't, and I don't know. I don't think that it's a specific policy that says, well, this is one way of getting rid of a bunch of kids that I don't have to look at their application. So that's a no. Getting a C in organic chem is automatically disqualifying. I don't know where you heard that. It's not so much what you got in any one specific course. It's a GPA requirement. I won't tell you what our average GPA or our minimum GPA that we look at is, because that's a proprietary formula. But there's no one class that if you didn't get a B or an A, I'm automatically going to go, oh, nope, they're out the door. However, if you feel that your GPA is part of your problem, we do highly encourage post-bac programs to help your GPA a little bit. And especially if you had some issues with some lower grades in some of your science courses, then the post-bac is designed for you to retake some of those courses and hopefully get a better grade. So that is one recommendation. Let me see. Failing a class in order to repeat it, thinking the grade will be overwritten by the higher grade. I'm not even sure. Like, why would you do that? Like, I really don't even know what the answer is to that. Like, I wouldn't fail a class on purpose. But like I said, if your GPA, I'm going to go back to, if your GPA is a problem, then the only way you can fix that is to retake a course, maybe do a post-bac. So yeah, if you take it and you failed it, it's going to stay on your transcript. So I don't know why you would torture yourself with that. So a little vague on the answer there, but I found that question odd. Taking the real MCAT as practice, engaging to see how you do, and taking it multiple times. This one always tortures us. We do prefer that you only take it once. We do understand that if you take it once and flub it, and if you take it again and you do much better, we kind of will ignore the first one. It is telling, and it is a problem if you take it 3 or 4 times. It raises an eyebrow. There are, again, some specific things that we look at, which I can't tell you, but is it okay if you take it just to see where you're at and then take it again and hope that you do better? Yeah, because if you do better, like I said, that's fine. But if you keep taking it over and over and the score is not what it should be, and it kind of gets you there in terms of like what we kind of sort of find acceptable, that could come back to haunt you, but during the application process. So I generally don't encourage that.
The reason why is because on the SAT, you can do that. You could take it as many times, and you could only ask them to refill one score. You see all the scores.
We will see all of the scores. So I can tell you, like, oh, this kid had a problem with this, and again, because some kids miss the boat on why they're not getting in. I've seen kids who get like a 88th percentile or 90th percentile, and they take it again, and I'm not sure why. Or you can see that they were a reapplicant and they took it again thinking that like an 88th percentile was not enough. And I can tell you at that point that kid didn't pick up on the fact that it was probably interpersonal skills problems or activities problems, and didn't ask for advice from anybody and just retook it to see if they can get a 90 something percentile. I'm telling that kid, That wasn't what didn't get you in. However, I do recommend if you're going to do anything, I know you guys have all sorts of access to all sorts of books, and you can take practice exams to see where you're at. I just encourage you to take a bunch of the practice exams and pick out your areas of weakness to work on. I will tell you the one without telling you any scores, because my boss would kill me. That new section, the critical analysis and reasoning section, that's the one that kills most people. So make sure you get a decent score on that one. And that's all I can say about that. Kind of mysteriously. You have to graduate from UC to be admitted to UC. Again, no. And then medical schools look unfavorably on people that get their clinic. Yeah, I addressed that one too. I don't, that in fact, that's like almost completely the opposite. I really want to see you doing hands-on stuff. So if that's a paid job as an EMT or a nursing assistant or an MA or a phlebotomist or a scribe, like these are all the popular ones these days, why would anybody consider that to be a problem, and that you did it to get paid and not volunteered? I want you to do some volunteer work, but it doesn't necessarily have to be in that. And I know everybody does like a Cope Health, or we have our own clinical experience program at UCI, and every academically affiliated place will have one of those, because they know that helps get people in the door, and those are perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But again, we do recognize that some of you kids don't have the ability to go volunteer. Like, I for one, as was mentioned in my CV, I am big on global health, and I go do surgeries in developing countries, and by my name, you can see even though I look like a generic white guy, I'm actually consider myself very Hispanic. And so I go down to Central and South America, where Spanish is actually my first language. And it's helpful to me to go and work in these areas where I can speak Spanish, and there's no language barrier there. But some of you don't have the ability to do that, right? Some of you don't have the time or the money, or you need to have a job, and so I recognize, and I facetiously call that kind of go dig a well in Guatemala. But not everybody has that opportunity. So don't sweat it if you can't. Don't sweat having to go volunteer everything. That's not true at all. So, all right. So hopefully that answers some of your questions. I can go into more detail about any of the areas that I mentioned, or if you guys have another question, I'm perfectly happy to answer, since I probably blasted right through all of everything in less than half an hour. But
we have about 25 questions, so
okay, fair enough.
I'll start with the first one, and then the rest of the team will take them. Is UCI looking for students with a stronger background in research or clinical experience if one happens to be stronger than the other?
Yeah. So again, it's a balance. I won't tell you that we're looking for more research or clinical. I want to see both. You can do a balance. And if you're a little bit weak in one of them, but really strong in the other one, I don't care really which one. Maybe if I had to say which, I would probably prefer clinical, because I want to know that you got yourself into, and that once you hit the floors in your third year, that you're not going to be totally unaware of what happens or how it works. So it's a difficult question to answer. But I could tell you that it does raise eyebrows if you have no research at UCI. That kind of like that's a ding.
The next question sort of has multiple parts. I'll read the whole thing off at once. It says, what is your opinion on DIY post-bacs, including both community college and credit and upper division credit? And can a strong upward trajectory be enough to show academic competency and make up for a poor cumulative GPA?
I don't recommend DIY, mostly because a lot of these programs and okay, I'm going to go on a side trip for mentorship, because I have a whole lecture on that too. But Yes, to the part of if your trajectory is upwards, even though it might not be the best GPA, I'd rather at least it is a saving grace to see that the trajectory is upwards. Like maybe you had shell shock in your first year and then worked your way up from there. So yes, an upward trajectory helps. But the reason why a actual program as opposed to a DIY is because you can get some letters that help. You are going to need to get letters of recommendation. Oh, okay. So this actually reminds me. So we want to see letters of recommendation, not just from your classes, your educational component, but it is really kind of weird for us if you say, well, I did 1,000 hours of research in somebody's lab for 2 years and I got a paper out of it, or I did, I got an abstract or something, and there's no letter from that person. And then, or oh my God, I had this like really awesome experience working at some hospital where I got to see this and that, and then there's no letter from that person. Like, for instance, I worked in somebody's front desk and I was their office manager, and then there's no letter from that person. Or I volunteered for 3 years at wherever, again, Camp Kesem or Build a Habitat for Humanity or that kind of thing. And again, there's no letter. So we want to see a smattering of letters, not just from your academics, but from some of your activities. That's very helpful.
If I could just add to that, the challenge is that a lot of people think that your letters should be from MDs and PhDs for your medical school, and not, for example, the Habitat for Humanities project manager who builds houses and has nothing to do with medicine. And I think the issue is a lot of people have been told that you need to get them from medically people, whereas,
Yes. So yeah, dispel that myth. That's not entirely true. It is nice. Like I said, if you volunteered or you worked or you were a scribe in the emergency department and you worked with one particular attending, it's nice to get a letter from them. But it's also nice to get a letter from, I get letters from their kids that are athletes, and their coach sends me a letter, and that also speaks a lot towards who that person was, that they were the captain of the swim team and they did a great job, and because that displayed leadership. So you don't have to get them all from MDs. You don't have to get them all. It's all about balance. Get a smattering. If you did research, get one from research. That helps. If you did some community service, get one from there, and then get some from some professors. And then if you did some clinical activity, get one from there. And that's about 4 or 5 letters, 6 letters maybe, that will get you that variety that you want. But I really discourage DIY because you can't get the letters. You start dissociating yourself from people that might write you a good letter. And some of these programs are designed specifically to help you figure out what's wrong with your not what's wrong, but where your weaknesses are in your application so that you can work on it. Because it might not be your grades. It might be all these other things that I mentioned. And how do you know unless you're getting good mentorship? I had terrible mentors, I'll tell you, when I was growing up, if you will, and I struggled more than I needed to. And here I am today. So I'm grateful for everything that happened because it made me who I am, but I struggled more than I needed to. And if I'd had good mentors, I would not have struggled as much is the point. And here's the other thing that I'm going to not go too much on it about mentorship, but is that you can have more than one mentor. It is not a marriage. You are not cheating on your mentor if you have another mentor, because you might have a mentor that's really good at research, and you might have a mentor that's really good at interpersonal skills, or there might be a mentor that you have that is an academic mentor, and there's a career mentor. Like I've run my job entitles being a career advisor for some of these kids, but I'm a trauma surgeon by nature. So if some of these kids come to me and they say, well, I want to be a pediatrician, I'm like, well, I can't mentor you for being a pediatrician. Let me find somebody for you, and I will get you somebody that can be your specialty advisor or your specialty mentor. So don't be afraid to hunt for more than one mentor. It's okay. Let's see what's next. Is it this taking in consideration the grades are sometimes curved? Is there a way to compare CC raw grades versus those that are curved? Yep, the grade's the grade. And that's how it shows up. Like I said, we do know a couple of colleges that are notorious for inflating grades, but I mean that is what it is. The grades are the grades. Thank you for being when reading our personal statements. What is a sentiment you try to look for or hope we demonstrate? You know, it's such an intangible. But I want to, it's kind of like this, like I look for, why are you doing this? And is it for the right reason? Because like I said, some kids I can tell right away that they're doing this because their parents are forcing them to do this and they have no passion for this. And those are the kids that write the laundry list because they're really, they have no intuition. Like I said, some people do it because, they worked at, in my neighborhood, it's everybody wants to do the Lestinet clinic. And I can tell you which school you came from, by the way. Sometimes by the activities that you do, I can tell all the kids that did the suitcase clinic are coming from Berkeley. And I can tell there's like a Happy Feet one that's like kind of from the UCLA area. Like, so there's nothing wrong with any of that. But the point for me is that, are you doing it for the right reason? Do you have a passion for it? I have one kid who I just recently talked to, who his mother was in a terrible accident and she had some neurologic damage. And so he's thinking that he either wants to be a neurologist or a neurotrauma or even a rehab guy. And so his passion for doing that is because it's coming from a place where it makes sense in his life. And that's what I want to see. I want to see where your passion's coming from. I want to see what your goals are, what your vision was. Did you have some insight? And again, like I said, if you had some insight because it was from some activity that you did, that's fine. But don't overburden your personal statement with that, because you have the opportunity to share what you did in the activity section. The more I've been in this journey, the more I have realized that each step has its own anxieties. I still have anxiety, stress in my life. So it's never going to end. My MCAS app, I would be okay, but I have felt that it's very, very hard. Do you have any advice for getting how to deal with stress and anxiety the more you progress through our journey? Talk to people, share your experiences, have a cohort, commiserate. I think that's much healthier than try to keeping it bottled up inside. I know COVID has isolated people, and that's part of the stress process, which adds on to the normal part of the stress process. Share with your mentors your concerns. Your mentors are there, if they're really good mentors, they're there more than just to tell you, which I've done for some of what I call my kids in particular that I helped get into med school. That they would call me and mention this or that, and I'm like, oh, I get that that's stressful for you, but you got to chug along. So you need somebody whose ear you can bend, I think is the best advice that I could give you. Because doing it by yourself is worse than doing it as part of a cohort that you can commiserate and share and have a drink with. So that would be my biggest advice there. Does clinical research versus lab research make it? Nope. I am perfectly okay. Like I said, would I look for a longitudinal program? Like I did this for 2 years and I got 1,000 hours versus I did a bunch of little different things for 50 hours each. Is the big difference that I'm looking for, not where you actually did it. Does the clinical research help? Yeah, again, because sometimes some of you guys are doing this clinical research because it's a paying job. And so having a little bit of clinical exposure with a little bit of clinical research gets you what I call, the two-bird kill, would kill two birds with one stone. And so there's nothing wrong with that. So, but is there a big difference between the clinical and the lab? No preference. Again, what I'm looking for is longitudinal and more hours, as opposed to little short periods of time, little summer projects here and there, because then you're just dabbling and then it's obvious that you're just trying to check off some boxes. You and your admission committee's view on post-bac students currently in post-bac juniors who do and preparing for the MCAT. Also, the doctors you grew up in the Illinois area is not far from Irvine. I was really happy you give me some guidance on how I can best prepare. All the things that I've mentioned, I wish I could tell you something more other than reflect on where you're at with your GPA and your MCAT and the activities that you've been doing. And again, those intangibles, if you're disadvantaged, somehow sneak it in there, right? Some of the secondaries, the question is usually what is some uh, um, um, hardship that you had to go through, or some stressful moment or something, which is your opportunity to kind of hint at us that you're doing this from a place of starting from a disadvantage. I'm a kid of immigrants who didn't speak English, so and they had very basic jobs, so I was disadvantaged. I didn't even realize back then that I was disadvantaged. But there's a place for you to put your stories if you want. We do take some of that into consideration. That becomes part of the formula. So don't be afraid to mention that. And I see that a lot in the applications. People who mention, like, part of my motivation was because when I grew up, like, my parents wouldn't even take me to the doctor when I broke my arm until they realized they had to, because, like, there was no insurance. And so that is taken in. Like, I've had kids that mention that, they pretty much had terrible parents and they essentially spent their college years living out of a car. And so, I mean, I don't want you to be melodramatic, but it's fair to mention these things because I want to know where you're coming from.
Dr. Barrios, can you tell them about the disadvantage statement? Because I'm sure a lot of people don't know this.
What was that now? Oh, the disadvantage statement. Yeah. A lot of applications now do have a disadvantage statement. Like, why do you feel you're disadvantaged? And again, that's where you really highlight why you feel you're disadvantaged. So that's in there. That's taken into. Oh, sorry. Hold on. It looks like I'm going to be taking out an appendix later tonight. Let's see. So yes, there is an opportunity for you to just, like, straight out mention in your disadvantage statement where you're coming from. Non-traditional applicants, we like those. To be honest with you, if you have an interesting background, we've had kids that have had complete other fields before they came to medicine, whether that was engineering or finance markets, and again, it's not the fact that you didn't, you don't have to, like, straight from high school to college, from college to medicine, from Canada. It's okay to be non-traditional. It's okay to, like, have been in the armed forces. We have kids that did AmeriCorps. So if you it's okay. The answer is yes. It's not, that's not going to be looked upon unfavorably. Amount of hours clinical experience. Because of COVID, many of us have only a couple hundred clinical experiences. I can't really tell you the number because it varies. I will just tell you personally, I start taking things seriously after 500 hours. Like, my boss is going to kill me. And again, it's not, and I know COVID destroyed things, but again, I'm hoping to find that you've done things over a period of time as opposed to try to do little things here and there, because that's commitment, and that's longitudinal, and so that's all I can say about that.
So, and I would also add, I just put this in the chat there. We did a whole almost 2-hour presentation about all the things you could do with COVID to gain clinical experience. So you should watch that because it was done exhaustively.
Yeah. And again, a job is a job. So they're not going to be not hiring scribes if they need them. They're not going to not be hiring EMTs or medical assistants if they need them. So if that's what it boils down to. But yes, I get it. Some of those community activities are out the door for now. And we keep going back and forth at UCI of, like, letting volunteers in and letting shadowers in. I have kids that try to shadow me, and it's like, it's been an on and off, and, like, pretty much almost like a no go for, like, the last year, which is a little unfortunate. But oh, by the way, shadowing, it's on the B menu. It's okay, it's fun, it's nice, it's good to see that if you have a little bit of that, but don't hang your hat on just shadowing, because that's not going to fly. So sorry to shatter some hearts out there if that's all you've been able to get in, like, because that's really one of the weaker ways of getting clinical exposure, to be honest with you. Upward trends, yes, as opposed to downward trends, definitely helpful. Writing our personal statements, what I already told you. Avoid starting with the sick grandparent. Avoid just doing a laundry list. Tell me how you felt about some of the experiences, or tell me something else that you did that didn't even have anything to do with medicine. That, like, I had one kid who was able to tie in his taekwondo into how he felt that could be similar to medicine, because it takes precision and dexterity and physical stamina and concentration and health to be able to do those things. And so that's the kind of thing that kind of interests me, as opposed to just I did this and then I did this and then I did this. Oh, sorry, my resident's calling me. Hey, I'm in the middle of a Zoom. What's up?
Oh, sorry. Be quick. It looks like realistically is probably not going to happen tonight. They're still running 8 rooms and they have to go to 4 rooms by 9 o'clock.
Okay.
So
can they get me a 7:50? Welcome to reality.
Just to make a plug, we have a personal statement workshop on March 26th.
Oh, there you go.
Come to it. She's going to give a lot of worksheets and questionnaires that you could ask yourself to help you write your personal statement.
Yeah, there you go. Oh my God. And my other advice for your personal statement is please have somebody else read it. I don't care if it's just your friends, your parents, your neighbors, a mentor, but you would be surprised how sometimes you put something in there that ends up sounding kind of dark or creepy, and you had the best of intentions, and it was inadvertently a turnoff. And then the other thing, believe it or not, is I do read these enough, and I do read them with enough detail. I am a stickler for syntax and spelling. It is a huge turnoff to see errors like that. There just shouldn't be any of those in your statement. So just go over them and have somebody go over them is the best advice also that I could give you. Yeah. These hours, make sure that's not EC hours or for your community service hours. If you engage these hours for your extracurriculars, is that EC hours, or what's EC hours versus CS?
Extracurriculars versus community service.
Oh, is there a difference? Like what kind of extracurriculars? Like, give me an example.
Like, community service is considered if you're going to help with Habitat for Humanities,
Right.
Versus extracurricular being in charge of your pre-med fraternity.
So yeah, so fraternity stuff, not that much.
Pre-med club or
Oh no, that's fine. But what I'm looking for, if you're pulling out stuff like pre-med clubs, is did you have a leadership position in that, because you have the opportunity to put leadership activities, or was it like a service frat or sorority where you went off and you raised some money for something? So there could be some crossover there. That's perfectly fine. Like, yes, the straight up oh dear God, hold on. Sorry, put me on mute, feel free. There we go. Sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. So this is life during COVID. We're having a crisis at work because 3 of my partners are out with COVID right now, and so we're stretched thin. And in case something really bad happens tonight, they asked if I could come in. So, anyways, What kind of resources are available for student wellness and students who may be parents? I don't know specifically about students that may be parents, to be honest with you, but there is wellness issue. It is a hot topic right now. We have counselors at the med school.
I posted the link to student wellness for the School of Medicine in the chat.
Yeah, it is actually, it's a thing. We have psychologists that you can have appointments with. And there's all sorts of things and activities to improve your wellness. They have yoga stuff, and as well as, like I mentioned, professionals to help you with that. And for parents, I don't know that we have daycare or something like that, for instance, but I can't answer that. How weighted is undergrad versus grad GPA? I think MCAT is good. Is undergrad versus grad GPA very bad? Undergrad GPA below 3.4 by 4.0. Again, it is a balance, and there will be a cutoff, and I can't tell you what that is. But to be fair and not too mysterious, if you're still below 3.0 with your grad stuff tossed in, it's going to be a stretch. For applicants interested in PreMedCC, do students have an admission to the MD program first before? No, it's a package. It's a package deal. You get considered for Prime first, and that comes with an MD. And if they reject you for whatever reason, you're not a fit, is a better way of putting it, then you can still apply for the MD and you get put back into the pool of regular students for just the MD. So the Prime is a package.
Dr. Vega is doing a workshop, I think.
Oh, perfect. He is, speaking of mentors, he is the mentor for Prime. So if you're interested in that, I would definitely attend that if you can, because he will have more specific answers than I do. But the very basic gist is like, it's a package. How important are grades? Like if the grades are not perfect, is that, the grades themselves, I mean, we do have a cutoff. And again, I can't tell you what the cutoff is, but not everybody has to have a 4.0. A lot of schools in general or somewhere, like, let me tell you, if and this isn't UCI's, but if their average GPA for their entering class is 3.5, that means that a lot of kids had a GPA higher than 3.5 and a lot of kids had a GPA lower than 3.5. So consider that with a wink and a nod. What is the approach for applications for non-traditional? I also have bad grades several semesters. Put it in there somewhere, like why you think you got bad grades for one semester. I mean, did you have a family member die? Did you live in a car? Did you I mean, there's always reasons why some things happen. If it was just, that's who I am and those are my academics and that's as good as it's going to get. But, it's funny because sometimes I see this all the time. We have a weird, like, and I sometimes don't even know what to do with them. Really, really super awesome grades. And then they flub the MCAT and it's a low score, or mediocre, not so hot grades. And they have an almost perfect score on the MCAT. It's a balance. It averages out. So there is really no answer to, I look more at this or I look more at that, other than I can tell you that an upward trajectory helps you better than a downward trajectory. How old can letters of recommendation be that one can be used with our application? I wouldn't have them be older than a year or two. If you can reach out to that person who wrote you that letter before and get them to refresh it, that's a much better idea than to let it sit around and get stale. Because so here's the other thing I tell people, and I don't know if you've heard this before or somebody else has told you, when you're asking for a letter of recommendation, and I have a whole section on this too, is make sure that person seems enthusiastic about writing your letter. Like, oh my God, yes, I'd love to write your letter. Or, oh yeah, sure. I would probably just accidentally forget to send that person your stuff and remind them to write the letter for you, because you're probably going to get a mediocre letter, and a mediocre letter is a waste of space as opposed to getting another letter from somewhere else that's better and more enthusiastic. And how do you try to ensure that you have a better letter? Because there's what I call the Boy Scout letter, which is a generic good letter. They were clean and honest and dependable and polite and blah, 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 blah. That doesn't tell me anything. But they were like, oh my God, they were all of those things. Plus, I know that they dug a well in Guatemala and took care of their sick parent and did all these other activities and is the captain of the soccer team and blah, blah, blah. And they can't know that unless you give that to them. And by that, I mean, you give them your CV and you give them your personal statement, and your personal statement what might, again, be passionate about what is driving you to go into medicine as opposed to all the other kids. And they are probably much more likely to write a better letter that way, because I want to see in a letter of recommendation somebody who sounds like they know you, and they can't really do that unless they know a little bit about you outside of what they know you for. Like these kids that are doing research, and like the professor, that's all they can talk about is all the good research, but they can't mention anything else that you did. I wish they would have put that in there. That's what makes a superior letter as opposed to just a really nice letter. So that's another piece of advice. How important is research for med school? Again, very important. Can you get away with doing no research? Yes. Some of the med schools absolutely insist on research. Like I can't think of very many kids that got into UCI without having done some bit of research somewhere, because UCI in particular prides itself a lot on research. I'm so sure some of the other UC schools do too. But I'm sure that there are some more community-ish based med schools that might not, but it certainly helps, and it certainly adds some points to your application if you've done some. But like I said, if you're really severely disadvantaged and you just like, I just really didn't have time to go and do a lot of research, then I mean, we might consider that, but it's definitely not going to help you. Why do I love UCI? What sets UCI apart? I get asked this a lot, and this is in from my perspective. And each new department that I work in, I'm a busybody, and so to give a little bit more about me, I know she mentioned Trinity rattled off a couple of the things that I do, but I actually sit on a bunch of different committees. I sit on the IRB. I actually chair one of the IRB committees at UCI that it's the Institutional Review Board for Research at UCI. I sit on I actually chair I do a lot of chairing, and like I don't even think about it. For diversity and equitable when it comes to staff. I do my admission stuff, and then I do at some point actually do clinical work. But what I like most about it when I'm doing all these things is it is a nice environment to work in. That the people at UCI there's a lot of camaraderie. I feel like I can reach out to people that I need and get a response from them. It is a place where I have like so many residents' phone numbers and so many medical students' phone numbers, and even some undergrads on my phone. And it's just an approachable environment where you can phone a friend. And that goes a long way towards making work tolerable, because what we do is very stressful sometimes and annoying, and especially these days, everybody's nerves are on edge. And it just helps that you know that you can call somebody and ask for help. And I get that at UCI. Like I hang out with my partners outside of work. And I'll give you an example. Like the other day, I went with one of my partner's wives with her kids to go see Sing 2, because he doesn't like that kind of stuff. And I thought it was like going to be a good movie. And so I just called her up, and she's my movie buddy. And that's the kind of environment that we have at UCI. And so that's what really one of the things that I enjoy. And it goes up and down all the way. Med school, like I said, like I have a good relationship with a good number of the medical students, trying to be their mentor. And I know the med ed staff, like the deans that work in my pod, just really are doing it because they love the students and they're passionate about it. And we call each other, and we can't hang out as much, but above and beyond the clinical care, which is awesome. And you can find it any other hospital and any other university, medical school, there's that extra environment of the humanity that goes on behind it, which I enjoy. I went to med school back east, and that was a little more hierarchical. It was a little more serious. It was a little more dog eat dog. And I just, yes, you do good care in that environment, but I don't think you need to have that environment to get the work done. And so that was a long answer to that question. How do you compare seeing applications with high GPA and high NCAP and more traditional? Again, I don't care. To be honest with you, I really don't care. It's just, it's a non-issue as far as I'm concerned, whether you went straight through or whether you did non-traditional. In fact, right now I'm doing a research study on why all you guys are fascinated by doing gap years. I'm a little annoyed by that, to be honest with you. Like, I don't think everybody has to do a gap year. You can get into med school and have a new gap year. It just depends again on how your application looks. And yes, I think most of you now are going to have an advantage if you do a gap year, and that's probably the larger number of applicants we're taking, but it's not a requirement either way. It's not looked down upon. Again, it's all based on that formula and balance of your activities plus your academics. And if you were able to squeeze all that in 3.5 years while you're doing your application, that's fine. And as soon as you're done graduating, you come to med school. If you needed to take a little time off, or you decided to go do something else and then came back and become a physician, that's fine too. Don't sweat it. And think it's either one way or the other. People seem to act or think in black and whites, and it's not black and white. And so that's why sometimes my answers may seem a little vague, but it's because it's all one big giant formula that we look at. But at least, if anything, I can tell you, like, at least I can dispel some of the things that myths that some of these things make you completely not viable. And I just think that's just not true. What are the medical clinical opportunities for students? They had I think they changed the name because I started it, and then I've like been very vague about it. It used to be called the ICE program, but because of immigration issues in the last couple of years, we decided ICE was actually not a very good. It was Irvine Clinical Experience, but they decided to change the name. That was really probably a little bit of a trigger.
It's called iTeach now.
Okay, there you go. Yeah. But that's one opportunity. They do have strictly just a volunteer program, but they have that clinical opportunity. And you don't have to do it at UCI. You can do it, go find a hospital somewhere else. I know Hogue is doing a COPE thing. And so a lot of hospitals have some opportunities, if that's the direction you want to go in. Are medical grades looked down upon? They are not looked down upon. They're not looked down upon. The only reason I would say look down upon is because if that's the only thing you did, the difference between going and doing those medical grades versus doing stuff here is that it's fine and dandy, but then you still really don't know what medicine is like here. I mean, learning what medicine is like in Guatemala, I keep picking on Guatemala, but knowing how medicine works in Guatemala is not the same as knowing how medicine works here. And I can tell you that from experience because I've been to Nicaragua, Peru, El Salvador, Paraguay. Where else did I recently go? Kenya. I'm trying to, Cambodia. I just got back from Ecuador in October. So like it's a variety of countries, and each one has its own issues and differences in the way they deal with trying to get everybody some health care. And so that's fine and dandy, but it's not going to get you knowledge of how it works here. So
This also doesn't mean that everybody should run down to Guatemala now, or
yeah, exactly. Yeah, plus it's really probably not feasible right now. We actually stopped our summer programs for research that kids could go down and do some research in the summer. Panama was a very popular place, and Vietnam was another popular place, and that's all on standstill. So it's almost like you really can't do it even if you wanted to. So, but if you have the opportunity, it's fine. It's fine, and it might be that's if it's consistent with who you are. Like people, students that are obviously going to go into OBGYN, and then they went and they did some research regarding women's healthcare, or was it the female pads for menstruation, HPV, anything that's related, because that's consistent with their story. I mean, that's perfectly fine. Don't take it off, but don't bank on it either as your go-to for your whole experience. Would you focus on one story for your Y medicine and expand it for your on it? Yeah, I wouldn't jump all over the board. Most people have one or two specifically good reasons why they're into medicine for it. And again, like I said, it's like, don't completely take your grandparents off, but it is a little bit of a turnoff for me when I read the same thing over about the sick grandparent as your starter. But I wouldn't jump all over the map too much. I would try to stick to one overarching theme in your application, because it just makes for better statement writing anyways, right? As opposed to some incoherent thing that jumps all over the map. Do you have any advice for first generation as we go through our application cycle? Find mentors, find people who've been through it, get advice from as many people as you can find out there. I mean, you're already doing it because you're here in a group, and some of the people here in the group may have advice about who to reach out to. And because God bless them, your parents, like my parents, they provided me a stable background and the opportunity to have stability so that I can go to med school, but they couldn't give me personal advice on the things that I needed to do to go into med school. So go out there and find them. That's the best advice that I can give you.
Can I also add one thing? If you're going to a community college, your classes are small enough that some of your teachers are either married to a doctor, had friends that they were through the undergrad or grad school that were mentors. One of my professors at the community college, his college roommate at UCSF was a medical student who is now an administrator. So these people, like people in academics know people. And so if you talk to your professors, they will know people that if they know that you are interested in medicine, they have people that they know in their own life that they could make available to you. Obviously, they have to like you. If you, the student that shows up and is rude to them, they're probably not going to share the contact information for their friend. But people in academics know each other, are married to each other.
Yeah. So yeah, reach out, ask questions. Don't be shy, be a little pushy, like not in a bad way, but be your own self-advocate. Like, I think that's probably one of the mistakes that I made. I didn't know what I didn't know, and I didn't ask enough people, and I had to bounce around a little bit, learning from my mistakes. Formal postbacks viewed in the admissions. I mean, that's fine, because like you had the knowledge that there was something off about your grades or your MCAT, or you need a little bit of help, or you need a little bit more time, and that was the best way to go about it. Perfectly fine and legit. Nothing wrong with that. There's a section on there that says describe you as, yeah, so you can describe your own disadvantage in your personal statement, and you can mention it a little bit again. Like I said, I don't want you to make your whole application about how disadvantaged you are, because then you become a one-trick pony, and it's obvious that you're using that as your selling point. And so it's okay to bring it about a little bit again, but don't overwhelm me, and don't put it again in your secondaries. So now, because like now I'm reading about it in your personal statement, now I'm reading about it in your secondaries, now I'm reading about it in the specific disadvantage statement, and that's a little too much. But it's okay to mention it again somewhere else aside from your disadvantaged, because it might be that something in your disadvantaged, because when you're writing your disadvantage, you're writing about specifically, this is why I was disadvantaged. And then in your personal statement, you might say, well, because I was disadvantaged, I saw that we couldn't get healthcare, or I had some clinic that was, everybody else in my neighborhood sat there for 8 hours every time they were sick, or, so you can bring it around a little bit again. That's okay, and that's legitimate. Just don't go overboard.
I just posted an 84-page document by the AAMC about disadvantage statements and information. So probably should read it. It's very exhaustive, but
Yeah. And again, that's part of go out there and find what people are saying about it. And especially if the entity that's interested in it is sending you something out there, then you should probably take a glance at it. Will interviews be in person or Zoom? Probably Zoom. Things have been changing back and forth, but I think for this upcoming cycle, it's still probably going to be Zoom. And it might be a permanent thing. I think some people are talking about actually making it a permanent thing. I don't know that that's true, so don't take my word for it, but I have a feeling that at least this coming cycle will probably still be Zoom. Immigrant school system by myself, but I try to join in webinars and get more information on how did you manage going through the school processes by yourself. I was just very persistent. And like I said, I probably struggled more than I needed to struggle. And like, I didn't know what I didn't know. And the best advice that I can just give you is just keep hammering out there people that do this for a living, your school counselor, your career counselor, your, reach out to the med school staff themselves. There's, if you have specific questions, don't just like show up and go answer everything for me, but if you have a specific question, they might be able to help you. If your answer your question is like, should I do a post-bac, then talk to a post-bac program and have them hopefully give you a once over. And so the real answer to that is just don't be shy, just ask. And some people might tell you no, but some people will tell you yes, and then you're in a better footing than you were before. Don't try to do it by yourself.
On February 4th, we have a post-bac presentation by the UC Consortium. She's the director of it. Probably a good person to show up. The other thing is, I would say, I don't want to assume, but I'm sure when you were pre-med, Zoom wasn't around. And so it's available today, so use it to the students. Yes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Like, and again, like anything that helps you answer your questions, look into it. There's nothing wrong with that. Currently in the app cycle, and I have not gotten an acceptance yet. At what point do you cut your losses? Yeah, it's starting to get late in the program. We're still running through. We still have probably about, if I had to guess, maybe 1,000 applications to still go through to wrap it up. But yeah, come March, it's getting. Yeah, you should start gearing up towards and take a really good look at what's in your application. Do you think it's your GPA? Do you think it's your MCAT? Do you think it's you haven't done enough activities? Find your career advisor or your counselor and ask them to look at your application and go, where do you think I need to focus on? And I would even start doing it now, because even though you're allowed to project some of your hours, you at least have to have started something new if you're going to go out there and get a new clinical experience going, or a job, or retake your MCATs or whatever you think you need to do, or start applying for a post-bac.
I just posted Me Mentor. They do a lot of they're doing them now over Zoom. Their Instagram, they're doing a lot of mock interviews over Zoom, so with medical students.
Yeah, you would be surprised how you can flub those. So yes, that is good advice. What kind of activities can you get to allow me to exhibit leadership qualities if I'm not exactly a leader by nature, but I am certainly not no follower either. I mean, leadership positions are leadership positions, right? Do they have whatever activity you're going to join? Do they have a president, a vice president, a secretary, a treasurer? And are any of those skills reasonable to you? Like, if you're not a president type person, then don't apply for the presidency. So if you like to deal with numbers, apply for the treasury. There's even during scribing and even during volunteers, there's opportunities for you to be like an educator for the volunteers, or like the team leader for the volunteers, or the lead scribe, or there's so many different positions out there that it's exhaustive, and I couldn't be able to tell you specifically what to try to get into, but again, there's a wide variety of things out there. Should I retake a class if we got a low grade on it? Will you look at if it's one of like the core classes, like one of the STEM classes, like if chemistry, biology, OChem, things like that, and you got a C minus, whatever, yeah, you might want to retake that. And again, there's you might want to consider a post-bac because it's designed to help you with retaking some of those. How do you manage all of that with such a thing? My time management skills are probably not even what they need to be, but a lot of these things sound very exhaustive, but they're maybe take up an hour of my month or 2 hours of my month. And so I just, thank God, also have an assistant who has access to my calendar that makes sure that I don't overbook stuff. Which I also tend to do. I tend to book 2 or 3 things at the same time, and then she calls me up and she goes, "Did you mean to do that?" And then I'm like, "Yeah, crap." And then I reschedule it. Still actively shifting. Does that count as a good clinical experience? Yes, I'm going to shorten that one. What are the odds of someone who has a low undergrad GPA but high masters? Again, what is your overall GPA? That's all blended in, and what was your MCAT, and what were your activities, and what were your life experiences. But you also have to be really very realistic and look at the averages that are at the schools that you're applying to. It's unfortunately a very broad open question, but there we are. Like I said, unfortunately, it's just such a huge formula that goes through our heads when we make those decisions. Oh dear God, sorry about that. You know what? I'm just gonna put this one on. Believe it or not, that's actually my friends trying to see if they want to do a movie night. So I do have some fun. When we tell our story and everything we have gone through, do you take it as if we want pity? That is a really super good question. That is a balance, right? And again, that's what I was saying earlier. Don't put it everywhere, all over your application, because then it's obvious that it is a pity party, as opposed to if you put it in your disadvantage statement and then maybe bring it around again in your personal statement a little bit, but don't make your whole, like I will tell you, and it was really kind of very unfortunate. I recently read an application where her whole personal statement was about being an immigrant, and then her disadvantage was about being an immigrant, and then her thing that she had to overcome in her secondaries was about being an immigrant. And the thing that she was most proud of in her secondary was how, even though she was an immigrant, so it's like, okay, girlfriend, I get it, you're an immigrant. So weigh the balance. It's okay to put it in there, but if you put it in there too much, and again, have somebody read it, have somebody tell you, and have somebody tell you with that specific question, like, am I being a little too much, one trick pony on this and making it sound like a pity party, or is it explanatory to who I am? So I can't underestimate that piece of advice. Is have people look at it, have people look at your file, have people, or rather your statements, so that they think it's appropriate and not, like I said, like I've seen things go dark and creepy and obviously not the intention, but we all make those mistakes. I've done it myself. Do you have any advice for us to prepare for interviews? I think it was already mentioned. Really, take advantage of any opportunities that you have, like a Zoom practice session. Somebody who does this for a living that might be able to help you. Whether it's in person, it's really not that different. Yes, it's slightly different skill set between Zoom and in person, but it's not really like you're going to talk to somebody the same whether you're talking over Zoom, and you see, like, some people stiffen up and get robotic because it's Zoom, which is, you just have to make sure you avoid some of that, but get a hold of all the practice sessions that are available out there to you, such as the one that was just mentioned. Because if they're really doing any favors, they're giving you feedback, whether it's particularly good or bad, that you've done a good job or a bad job. Can your mentor write a letter? Yes, but in particular, if they've witnessed one of the activities, if they've witnessed you doing research, if they've witnessed you doing community service, if they've witnessed, if they were one of your teachers, because they can add on to the fact that they did some activity with you and then were able to mentor for you. But if they really can't speak towards any of those things, then I would probably save that for the people that you actually did an activity with. Does UCI accept their own students from undergrad to UCI med school? Is there a specific program like in UCR? I am not aware of any specific programs. Yes, we take some of our own UCI kids. I mean, they're like everybody else. They have the same shot everybody else does. I don't know that they have any specific programs for undergrads. I'm not aware of them. But like I said, because of the UC consortium, like I know the post-bac program has its crikey. Hold on, sorry, this is from the hospital. Yes.
Oh, sorry to bother. Just want to let you guys know the information that we've posted in chat. Please download it because it's not going to stay anywhere. And if you just right click and download it all. There's little 3 dots at the end. You could just click it and then it says just download. Or cut and paste.
All right, good times. I'm going back to the hospital. Does it have to be an MD? Doesn't matter. That's the long and the short of it. Any words of wisdom for high schooler aspiring to be a physician? If you have time for any advice, is appreciated. Everything that I just said applies to you. Thoughts on committee letters? Oh God, I hate them. Because it makes me pop up an open extra window and scroll down to get to the normal regular letters that they base their committee letter on. But it is what it is. Your school offers what it offers. So they're a pain in the butt, but I read them. So but I wish I didn't have to. I prefer just the individual letters. In the co-house program, I frequently shadow a nurse who teaches me and practice minor procedures that he does, not on patients. Will it be considered a good letter? If not from it, yeah, if you've done a very large number of hours from this person and that is the primary person that you have contact with, that's fine. Are they like a nurse practitioner or are they just curious?
It's probably a nurse, a floor nurse or a general nurse.
Oh, okay. Well, but still, like we do get because they're usually a lot of these shadowing programs or volunteering programs are run by nurses anyways. So if that's the person running the program or doing the work with you, that's fine. All right.
Well, I really appreciate your time. I don't think there's any more. I think you answered 64 questions.
Dear Lord. Rapid fire.
Hey, but you're a trauma surgeon. You want just things thrown at you. So
yeah, exactly. And like I said, I'm going to hang up here and try to figure out what storm is brewing at the hospital. So, all right, guys, I was happy to be here and hopefully dispel some of the things that might have been causing you some stress. So happy to answer again sometime in the near future. Well, not too near, please. But
thank you.
But maybe during the next cycle, happy to do it again.
Thank you, sir. Really appreciate your time.
Very good. Have a good night, guys.
Have a good night.